we're here to bring a new type of news show.
New insights, new styles, and new topics every day.
We are News Generation.
Bringing news just for you. It's Monday, October 14th here in Seoul. I'm Songyujin, and you're watching News Generation. Today, we're joined by Park Ki-woon.
Thanks for having me. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday! And Jessica Diana.
Happy Monday! Woohoo!
We're all so happy.
So happy, so fully charged, yes.
Both are here to speak on behalf of those in their 20s and 30s. Now, here's a quick announcement for our viewers. We're excited to introduce a brand new format for News Gen starting this week, just in time for our fall season reshuffle. So each day of the week, we'll focus on a specific theme. So stay with us and enjoy the new News Generation. Woo! So today is Monday, the start of a brand new week, and that means we're going to talk about some of the latest topics trending among the younger generation here in Korea on NewsGen. So today we're going to talk about our generation's increasing reluctance to communicate via phone calls, often called phonephobia. Now, this isn't the first time we've touched on this topic on the show, but with new statistics coming out, it's clear that avoiding phone calls is becoming a prevalent issue among our generation, right?
It definitely is, and we've touched upon this a few times,
Right.
but because we have new statistics, obviously we have to update everyone.
Yes.
And so this term is not an official medical term, but rather something that came up online and it became very viral and quite common. It became a common symptom among the younger generation. And I was both surprised and not surprised to see the new statistics because I was definitely someone who also had phone phobia.
Right.
But I slowly overcame this kind of fear of calling people through work I did here in Arirang and before I came to Arirang. So I have no problems like calling anyone or people that I don't know.
So Arirang actually helped you overcome your
Yeah,
core
it has.
phobia,
Thank you, Arirang. I love Arirang. But to give some of our new updates on the figures, let's take a look at the screen. So according to a survey conducted by a recruitment platform, there was an uptick to those who said they have phone phobia and prefer texting and messaging. So out of 1,186 millennials and Gen Zs asked, 40% said they had the fear of calling or receiving calls, and 75% of them responded they prefer texting and messaging. So this is a 10% and a 14% increase from the same survey conducted 2 years ago.
I see.
So as we're continuing to live in a more convenient, digitalized, smart world, I think we require less human interaction, which could be one of the reasons explaining this kind of change in behavioral patterns that we're seeing, especially among younger generation. And I think this will kind of continue even more because, you know, when I see even my nephews, as soon as they're born, the first thing their parents give them is it's a smartphone. And they always want a new phone because they want to keep up with, you know, their friends' new phones as well. So it's a lot of things have changed. And I think it's something that we should be worried about, but at the same time, we have to kind of accept it because things change, you know. 20, 30 years ago, we didn't even have a phone.
Yeah.
And it was normal not to have a phone.
Nowadays, it's normal.
Exactly. So we have to kind of adapt to the new normal and find new ways within the new norm. That's what I think.
And we're going to talk about some of the factors that are contributing to the rise of phone phobia among our generation in a while. But Kyun just mentioned that phone phobia is not really a professional medical term. So let's talk a bit more about what exactly defines phone phobia. So Cheska, what are some of the most common symptoms?
So commonly known as call phobia or phone phobia, but also in the Western world, it's also called telephobia.
Right.
And some of the very basic symptoms include wanting to avoid the phone call, getting a little nervous when your phone starts to ring and you check who's calling and why is this person calling, or trying to delay that interaction that you have to have through the phone. And sometimes it's very common for people, especially at work, for us to communicate via like Kakao messages or even text. And nowadays we even have a special messenger dedicated for workplaces so that people would have less interaction through the phone calls. But I've also heard that it's very common among even part-timers to notify resigning or being absent from work through just text messaging instead of notifying them over the phone.
That's quite different from our parents' generation.
Exactly. Right? And obviously it has taken on a new level. That's why we're discussing it here on NewsGen, where some people actually get extremely nervous to actually make phone conversations. And even though this is a more cultural phenomenon, if the symptoms get very severe, for instance, if you actually have like palpitations or increased heart rate, or or even feeling nausea when you have to think about calling, it can actually be classified under social anxiety disorder as well. Yeah.
Right. I even heard that some people who have phone phobia, when they make a phone call, they're kind of like, please don't pick up, please don't pick up. And then when that person actually
please let it go to
picks up,
voicemail.
yeah, so these are kind of like the common symptoms of phone phobia. So we've taken a look at the status quo by looking at the stats and also some of the common symptoms. So let's dive a bit deeper. So let's talk about some of the typical reasons or factors people cite for experiencing telephobia.
And there was a recent survey conducted asking exactly this question. So let's take a look at the screen to find out why people avoid wanting to make phone calls. Now, the overwhelming reason for wanting to avoid it was the pressure to respond immediately. And this really makes sense because when you're on the phone, you do not have the luxury to say, give me like 5 minutes.
You don't have the time to think about it, right?
Exactly. And especially at work, and Ki-hoon, you could probably relate, when your boss is asking like a question or firing you questions about, delivering the work right on time or why you were absent, you can get really nervous. So that was the overwhelming reason.
But you also want to get your answers right and perfect.
Exactly. And which is followed by the second one because you're worried about being articulate in these circumstances because you don't want to sound silly, you don't want to sound unprepared, and you do actually want to give the right responses, right? So people actually feel worried that they're not going to be articulate when responding on the phone. And then lastly, people just prefer text and messaging, but I think it has to do more with how we're used to the generation of digitalized and in instant text messaging generation.
Right, definitely. So we can see that more people, especially among the younger generation, are becoming reluctant to actually calling. They're wanting to communicate more through text messages or online.
Yes.
So Kyun, I also want to ask you, what do you think has triggered this fear or discomfort when it comes to calling or picking up the phone?
I think this societal change has definitely taken this big effect on individuals on a personal level too. And I think the biggest reason that brought about this change has to be the increasing non-contact interaction that has become very possible through devices, most commonly smartphones.
And also after COVID, right?
Exactly,
Yeah,
COVID took a big influence as well. And talking to someone face-to-face or over the phone can be done through text and messages quite easily. And Cheska already mentioned like the reasons for those preferences, which I can totally relate to. So for example, like when you order food, shop for clothes, make reservations, everything can be done through the screen without talking to anyone.
Right.
So as there is no need to talk to anyone or to do or get what you want in our daily lives, people may feel a little uncomfortable when talking to someone for the first time, or even having to make a phone call like that's related to work. And also, this is another societal issue with a falling birth rate. We're seeing more young children growing up without any siblings, and people in their 20s and 30s opting to live by themselves. So it's really, we're like just minimizing any kind of social human interaction, which definitely influences the way how we feel in front of people in general. And it could feel more like a pressure and become a fear of having that phone phobia when you're not used to talking to someone over the phone. And it's like when you can text or just message anyone at any time, it's like, do I need to make this phone call? And like what Cheska was saying, like when you're the person who's making the phone call, you already know what you're going to say to that person.
Right.
But if you receive it,
but when you're on the receiving end, and especially when you see who's calling you, you have this like, you can definitely have like, awkward thoughts and like,
or feel unprepared.
And like pressured as well, depending on who's calling you. I mean, if it's your friends or family members, you'll feel comfortable picking up. But if it's like your seniors or work colleagues, and you immediately think, oh, why is this person calling me at this time? Like, is it work? Obviously, it's going to be work related.
Or did I do something wrong?
Did I do something
Exactly,
wrong?
yeah.
So like, even before you pick up the call, you're kind of anxious. So I do kind of understand why a lot of young people have this phone phobia. But once you pick up the call, like I've noticed from my own experience, it's not such a big deal.
It's not as bad as how much we fear.
Exactly.
Right. But taking that first step is always hard,
it
right?
really is, And I just wanted to add, because when you're on the call, you can hear the person's voice and feel the emotion of the other person, right? So if the call is an uncomfortable one, whereas on text messages, you can actually keep your distance from that emotion.
Right.
But when you're literally on the call, those emotions transfer. And I think people get really anxious about that too. Like if the person's angry or
grumpy.
Grumpy, or the person's upset, I don't want to be on the other end, the receiving end of it. So I think that's probably one of the reasons that they're trying to avoid it as well.
But also like just, what Cheska mentioned is very interesting. if you're talking to someone, you can feel the emotions, so you can kind of understand even more like what they're trying to say, the message they're trying to convey.
Exactly, yeah.
But when everything's done through text, you don't really feel that emotion. So there could be a bit of misunderstanding as well, and that kind of causes more conflict later on.
It does.
Because like person who wrote a message, it really depends like how the other person receives it, and if they misunderstand it, they'll be like, why didn't you get this? I meant this. But then just looking at it through words, you can't really fully understand what that person was trying to say. So, I mean, there are pros and cons to both sides. Yeah.
Definitely pros and cons when it comes to calling. And we've just taken a look at some of the reasons or factors that is leading to the increasing state of young people experiencing phone phobia. Now, you guys are both part of the younger generation.
Yes, we are.
So I would like to also toss you a question.
Barely.
I saw his face. He's like, am I?
You guys are part of the younger
Still am?
generation.
Okay.
Yes.
So have either of you, I know Kyun's answer because we've talked about phone phobia on NewsGen before, but Cheska, have you experienced a telephobia before?
Not as severe as we're talking about today. Obviously, I do feel pressure to respond to work calls, but what I usually do is if I'm on the calling, if I'm the caller, I usually write down everything that I want to say, and I even go so far as to literally rehearse.
Really?
Yeah, in front of a mirror. I actually say it out loud as if somebody is responding. I go like, like I actually respond in a way that it's a literal scenario of the person. But one of the things that kind of gets me about calling is that I feel bad sometimes because I don't know if I'm interrupting the person's attention or time, or if the other person has call phobia.
You're really considerate.
And I'm the one that's giving them the pressure. But I'm okay with calls. And Kyun and I just talked about it before going on to the show. But I think it also has to do with the fact that I'm a freelancer. So a lot of the calls that are coming to me are mostly clients.
Work opportunities.
Hopefully, for work opportunities. So they're more welcoming. Whereas I think if you're a full-time employee, if your boss calls you, it's probably for work emergency.
You might have done something wrong.
Like the immediate thought is not as positive. It's not that welcoming.
Exactly.
You immediately think, oh, did I do something wrong? Am I in trouble?
Am I in trouble? Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So you immediately you get nervous before you even pick up the call.
Exactly.
But once you pick up, like I said, once you pick up the call, it's not that serious as you expected. And usually if it's something really serious, a lot of seniors text you before calling you. You have a minute to call. Can you give me a buzz when you can?
Yeah.
Then you think, oh no, I'm in big trouble.
Right, so we've taken a look at our panelists' experience of calling or phone phobia. Now, I'm pretty sure that a lot of our viewers who are watching right now would wonder, do I have phone phobia or not? So let's find out with a quick test with our panelists. We're back with our mini test. So I'm going to read out 3 statements. So please raise the O or X sign depending on your answer, and our viewers can also follow too. So number 1, I write down a memo or script of what I'm going to call to say before making a call. 1, 2, 3.
Kind of in the middle.
Oh, in the middle.
Definitely.
Okay, could you briefly explain? I already heard
Yes,
from
you
Cheska,
heard mine,
so
yeah.
Kyun.
For me, it really depends who I'm calling. If it's a work-related business, I need to sound professional. So I write down, not the script. I don't go that far because
points?
I'm a little lazy. I just write down the
Bullet
checklist,
points?
Yes.
like the main points that I need to say to that person. Because once you're actually on the phone, like, you lose your train of thought.
Exactly,
And then you might forget what you have to say.
Yes.
And once you hang up, it's a little too late to call back. And
Yeah.
it
I should
sounds
have said
really
that, yeah.
unprofessional. Calling back, sorry, I forgot to mention one more thing.
But that's really important. So can I just talk
So you
about it
always
again?
miss out the most important part. So
Yeah.
I do write down a checklist and I just check it as I say over the phone. Yeah.
Yes.
Right, so I think this not really just determines whether you are having phone phobia or not. So let's take a look at the second and third statements. Number 2, I feel anxious whenever my phone rings. 1, 2, 3. In the middle? Oh.
Yeah, in the middle, yeah.
Could you please explain briefly?
Like I mentioned, I do feel anxious if it is work related and I was the one managing it. Because usually I get projects. So if they're calling to remedy the project or if it's something that I've already done perfectly and they're calling back, sometimes I do get a little bit nervous. But I usually don't try to think too much before actually picking it up. I would rather deal with it with the person on the call. So that's why I was kind of in between, yeah.
Do you agree?
I do. Of course I do. The thing is, I think it's more about what kind of relationship I have with that person calling me. Not on a personal
I know.
I'm talking about,
I mean, the way that you said it.
Sorry, I didn't mean it that way. But if it's like someone from work,
Yeah.
you immediately think, oh, you know, why is this person calling me at this time? And I think it's also about you having the choice to pick it up on the spot or actually calling back later when you're ready. Like, you know, like it gives you time to think over, oh, what have I done with this person lately? Did I do something wrong, you know? So
what could this be possibly
exactly.
be about?
So I think
It
you know,
depends.
it really depends. I mean, like I said, if it's your friend or family members, I'll just pick it up immediately. But if it's like people I feel a little uncomfortable with, I wouldn't pick it up immediately. Like I'll think about what to say before I pick up. But then, you know, usually if I'm too busy, obviously if I can't pick up the call, I'll text them right away saying, "Can I give you a call?" in 5
Call a bit
minutes?
later. Yeah,
I'll get
yeah,
back to you very soon.
I do that
So
often
yeah, that's
too.
what I do.
I see. And our last statement, number 3, when ordering food, I prefer using an app over calling, even if there is a discount for calling.
Oh.
1, 2, 3.
I love discounts.
Oh, sorry.
X?
Yeah.
Okay, why did you choose X?
So I would still use the app.
Use the
Yeah,
app.
I would still use the app, but for a very different reason. I don't want to bother them because they're getting flooded with the delivery. So it's another way of call phobia. They might be phobia of like customers calling. So I want to respect their time. Yeah.
If I can get my discount, I can bother people.
Okay, well, hope our mini test
So
helped
discount over phone phobia.
hope our mini test helped our viewers learn about phone phobia. Now, before starting our show, we also asked our viewers whether their peers or themselves have experienced phone phobia, and here's what 3 of them said. If we look at the comments, Rex Alex says, Dominic says, I'm a Gen Z and I have a phobia of talking on the phone. I think my main struggle was when I was applying for jobs and they would call me. Most of the time, I ended up just letting it ring and not answering because I was scared of talking on the phone. Y Tuntil says, it's weird how many of us aren't afraid of other social interactions, but our hearts begin to beat faster right before a phone call. Personally, I have 0 problems talking on the phone for private reasons, but anything formal is stressful for no good reason. I'd rather just talk to people in person where my facial expressions and mannerisms can help with getting my point and energy across. Joseph N8I says, for me, no. Maybe other people also no. Right, so we've taken a look at our viewers' comments as well. For a more in-depth discussion on phone phobia, we're going to talk with an expert right after this break. Right, so today we're joined by Ian Jung, a certified therapist at the UME Psychological Counseling Services in Seoul. Welcome, Ian Jung, to the show.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. So our first question for you today is, what do you think are the main factors contributing to phone phobia?
So phone phobia often stems from psychological, social, and situational factors. It is frequently linked to a preference for digital communication, such as texting and social media, which can create discomfort with voice calls. Performance anxiety is prevalent as many individuals fear being judged or misinterpreted during conversations. A previous negative experience, such as distressing news on uncomfortable conversations, can create lasting association between phone use and anxiety. Additionally, the lack of nonverbal cues during phone calls can make communication feel more uncertain and overwhelming, leading to heightened stress, and personality traits like introversion and perfectionism further contribute to this fear, as individuals may prefer written communication and feel pressure to respond perfectly.
What kinds of personal or social challenges can arise from avoiding phone calls?
On a personal level, avoiding phone calls can lead to increased feelings of isolation as individuals miss out on meaningful connection and support. This avoidance may strain relationships with friends and family, interpreting it as a disinterest. Professionally, it can hinder networking opportunities and career advancement. leaving individuals feeling unprepared for essential conversations. So over time, the cycle of avoidance can negatively impact self-esteem and hinder social engagement.
As you mentioned, it is definitely a cycle. And for those who might want to overcome phone phobia, do you have any practical tips of advice, maybe one or two, that can actually help these people?
Yes. To manage phone phobia, several practical strategies can be effective. Gradually increase exposure to phone calls by starting with low-stakes conversation. Preparing a brief script or the key points can ease anxiety about forgetting what to say. Engaging in role-playing exercises can build confidence. Visualization techniques, such as imagining positive outcomes, can help reduce anxiety. And establishing a routine, setting a specific time for calls to create familiarity and reduce anxiety. And this is also very important, celebrating success, reflecting on what went well after each call and reward yourself with facing the challenge. And incorporating mindfulness practices like deep breathing before a call and seeking mental health support can provide additional coping strategies.
So very helpful advice. All right, Eunjung, thank you so much. As always, we really appreciate your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, so ending off, I would like to ask the same question to our panelists. Any one single tip or the most important tip for those who want to overcome phone phobia?
I have a short one.
Yeah, go ahead. Yes, please.
What I do is I call my mom every day and I call my dad every second day because I feel a bit more comfortable talking to my mom. And that really helped me to overcome this phone phobia, because once you get used to calling people, like, you start with people who are very close to you and people who are willing to listen to you, then you can take it to the next step and become a bit more professional, calling people that you don't know, but you have to. But if it's work related, it's part of building a new skill and becoming more professional. And you can, like what Eunjung said, miss out on business opportunities for avoiding these phone calls. So think of it as a step you have to overcome in order to improve yourself, become a better person, and develop your professional skills.
Right, indeed, because practice makes perfect.
It really does, yes.
And that's all from us today. But Houston will be back tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. Korea time. Special thanks today to Park Ki-woon.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And Cheska Dain-ho.
Pleasure's always mine. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. We are
News Generation.
네가 머문 이 세상이 더